Right. Oh, microphone. Do I need to speak into that microphone? So I have to sit down then, huh? Okay, then I will sit down. Right, yeah, I think we're all set. No, we're not set. One moment. He's in charge. So you tell us when we have to go. Yes, he's putting the thumbs up. Great. Thanks very much. Great to have you here. I know it's a lot of competition, so we are extremely grateful to have you here as our audience, and I'm also very grateful to have those three panelists with me. You see them on the board. I will also introduce them in a moment as Alex and as Hazel and as Guido. And to not lose any time, I'm going to go straight into things. Well, we do have a plan. It's always good to have a plan, and we have a plan. It's very meticulously planned. I don't know if we're going to stick to everything, but this plan is such that I will give you an introductory talk, about 10 minutes or so, so putting you into the frame of things, and then we will have 10-minute interventions by each of the panelists, and then also to leave ample time for you afterwards to get rid of your questions and comments if there are any. If you don't have any questions, I have loads, so do not worry. So this is our plan, and we have just told we've got exactly an hour, so we have to finish here at 5 minutes past 7, so we have to stick to the time, and now whatever comes up here, we don't want that. Yes, let's get started and not waste any time. And the topic, as you can see, is misinformation and disinformation. And there has been a lot of talk about it. There has been conferences. There have been reports written. There's, of course, a lot of material out there. There's initiatives. There's fact-checking activities, and so on and so forth. And some of that will be raised in the coming 60 minutes. And this one here, this photo here, is I've taken from Nick Newman. Nick Newman, you may know, from the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism. He's always publishing his predictions for the coming year, and this was, or came out at the beginning of this year, in February, I think it was, and he was writing something like, it's always like a new challenge. When you're dealing with misinformation, there's always a new challenge coming ahead, and in his predictions, Nick is saying that he has the impression that the problem is shifting more towards closed networks like WhatsApp, Telegram, and so on and so forth, or discussion groups like 4chan, 8chan, and so on. So this is his prediction, and that this is going to be the challenge for the sort of period ahead. Somebody else who's done a lot of work in this field is First Draft News. You may know that. First Draft News, in this one here, has been produced by Claire Wardle, who you may know, and she's also making the same prediction that very often nowadays rumors and the like misinformation start in so-called closed networks, and then they move on gradually until they finally surface on social networks and eventually also in traditional, or she calls it here, professional media. Now, our big question here in the next 60 minutes or so is how can technology support in the process of verification? And I don't know how many of you have been here in the previous sessions today. There have been quite a number of sessions. One was by Tom Trewinner, then the previous one was by Bellingcat. So you may have attended those and seen already that technology can do a lot of support here. And that's what we want to discuss from various angles, but we also want to sort of raise the issue of what is the role of journalism in this context, and what responsibilities are there for the various actors. Now, again, as I said, I would like to set the scene a bit, so I don't know how familiar everybody is with this topic of misinformation, so I thought just to be on the same page, I just do a few more clarifications or so, and what I also very strongly support is what Claire Wardle always postulates, and she always says, do not use the F word, the F ... news word. And I'm totally in line with her there, because it's just not calling the problem what it is. So if there is a lie, we should call it a lie. And there's different types of false or misinformation, ranging from satire to deliberately misleading information to just mistakes or errors. Everybody makes mistakes. So I also postulate and urge you to really call it what it is and get rid of that F word. This one here is something that has been produced by Alexios Manzalis. Alexios used to run the IFCN, the International Fact-Checking Network at Poynter. He's just now moved to TED. And that's also very important because I feel that very often we are mixing up things, fact-checking and verification, as often sort of used synonymously. And I find that very useful. Fact-checking on the one hand, I think, is what journalism and journalists have done for donkeys of years. And of course, it can also be part automated. For example, if you look at what Full Fact in the UK are doing, and Guido is also going to talk about this in a moment, whereas the other side, verification, is more about checking whether, for example, an image, a video or something is correct, doing forensic analysis and the like. So these are sort of two different things that are related, but I think it would help if we can try and separate that. Now, can technology really save us from that? My personal view is, no, it can't save us. There's always a human in the loop, and I think my personal view is he or she will remain there in the years to come, but it can definitely support, and this is something I don't know if in the previous session Bellingcat has shown this. Bellingcat is producing this list of really, really useful tools. It's an open source doc, or openly available, and there you find lots and lots of useful tools that can really support you when you're doing verification or so. And as I say, if you're looking for a starter kit, this is definitely a very useful site to go to. We have also done work in the area, this is sort of the commercial bit. I have to look at my time. We, meaning Deutsche Welle, we have actively participated in a number of research projects that deal with the topic of misinformation and verification. The first one started in 2013, which is called Reveal. Current one that is currently ongoing, just started very recently, is called We-Verify. And maybe of interest also in the one in the middle is called Invid, that just finished a very short, a few months ago. And there we are providing a free browser plugin that is also supporting video verification. You can download it, it's free, it's a Chrome plugin, it also works on Firefox. And currently we're having about 2,000 users, regular users, and over 11,000 downloads. So that's quite something, but it's there for you, for anybody who's working on it to use. I've just briefly talking, for example, to Lars, who's sitting here in the first row. We're getting very positive feedback, and lots of people who are dealing with it on a daily basis are using that. And I think Hazel has also used it before. Indeed. But we're coming to that. So I'm just coming to the end here. So there's lots of opportunities and challenges. This was also raised already 2 hours ago by Tom Trevina, this example. If you want to have sort of really, really top-class digital forensic, digital verification works, I encourage you to visit the New York Times piece here produced by Malachi Brown and his video team at the New York Times. And what they've done is they've mapped very precisely what happened at the Las Vegas shooting as it unfolded, using eyewitness accounts, social media content to sort of recapitulate and map what really happened in those fatal moments. And another one you may be familiar with, is also fairly recent from last year, produced by BBC News, BBC Africa, also with the support of Amnesty. This is the killing of 2 women and a child in Cameroon, and that was first hotly disputed by the authorities, but it was then verified and checked, and people could pinpoint exactly the location where it took place. So there's lots of material out there, and this is what journalism is all about, storytelling. So you can use all this for telling compelling and interesting stories. Now another one, and that's a downside when it comes to challenges and opportunities, there's also incidents like this. This is a very recent, very sad event which took place very recently in Christchurch, New Zealand, the shooting, you know that, and the challenges that come with it. When somebody like here, this murderer, live streamed whatever he did there. This brings me to an end. I want to close with this video here. I don't know, who's seen this video of the former president, Obama? So quite a few, not everybody. So this is also something that is coming up. Deep fakes, you may have heard of it, you may have seen that, and it is pretty good. And oops, I can't start the sound here because it's connected. Ah, damn. But then I leave it. So you see here that's Jordan Peele, the actor. So if we had the sound now, play it nicely, but it doesn't work, doesn't matter. So Obama is just saying something that was uttered by Jordan Peele, the actor. So this is what we're confronted with possibly in the future. With this, I would like to hand over to Alex. Thank you very much for this brief introduction. And Alexander is working for EU Disinfo Lab, Belgium, Brussels-based, and I have to also give you a short disclaimer. We are working together in this project, We Verify, and Alex is, amongst many other things, what he's doing, and he's going to talk about that in a moment, a co-author of a report, which he's also going to mention, that also looked at this in great detail, that was published only a few weeks ago, and was done for the European Council or Parliament, for the European Parliament. Please welcome Alexandre Alaphilippe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jochen. Thank you also the IGF for this fantastic panel today. So my name is Alexandre. I work at the EU Disinfo Lab. The EU Disinfo Lab, as Jochen said, is a Brussels-based NGO working on disinformation, doing research on disinformation, meaning doing research on disinformation campaigns, but also doing research on trying to understand what kind of future is waiting around the disinformation and trying to anticipate and to connect people together. So, Johan, I don't know if you have my presentation. Yes, perfect. I will just take the clicker, maybe, if it works.
Otherwise, I do it for you.
Yeah, it works. So, when we're talking about technology and automation and disinformation, there is a word that comes a lot, which is bot, which is very difficult to define. There are many tools around to try to understand what is a bot, who is a bot, etc. There is one tool from the University of Indiana called Botometer. You enter a Twitter account, it tells you the percentage of chance that you are a bot, and according to this, Donald Trump is almost 48% a bot. This is to say that technology is not neutral, because to understand and to have any kind of AI or algorithmic change, you need to put some criterions. And in that thing, is it because he's tweeting a lot? Is it because he's using automation services? Is it because he has a lot of fake followers or followers with low influence? And everything is questionable in terms of methodology. And the thing is, the more we are trying to understand what's going on, and by labeling things a little bit quickly, the problem is that we are not helping the cause. So the thing is, first we need to think about criterions, because sometimes you have people you think they are bot, but they're not bot. And I will come back to this, because I can, I had another one. Okay, I don't have it. So, because at the end, what is the difference between someone using automation to tweet or to publish on Facebook automatically because he's publishing from his website, from someone using automation to publish a lot of things? It's the same technology, is being used from different things. What is the difference between an activist trying to use Twitter or Facebook to be very active and to make some points and hiding with anonymity and without his real name, from people who are hiding because they want to promote some agenda or to promote hate? There are many difficulties around this, and we always need to be worried about the technology that we're building to help the human brain design. And I think that's the thing that we all share together, that at the end technology is just a tool. We need to be sure that it cannot be handled the wrong way, and that's the main thing. Technology can also help to understand what kind of astroturfing techniques you have. So once you have a fake news, the main thing that you try to do is try to promote it. There are many useful tools to promote it. This is something I don't know if you know about Captain Europe. Captain Europe is someone in Brussels who's dressed like Captain Europe, and is very happy to do so. And he's been taken into picture by the European Parliament. And very quickly it became something very viral, because people said, this is a campaign from the institution, and these are European bureaucrats dressing up like this because Europe, you know, they have absolutely no ID, and they are running out of good things, and they are ready to do anything to make people believe in the European dream, etc. So I spare to you all the details of the narrative. But by doing social network analysis, for instance, which is basically trying to map the networks on how the tweets and the retweets work between users, what is the first person to talk about something, what is the kind of communities that are acting around something, it's technology that you can use to debunk a piece of news. And I think that's very interesting. And if you see this, you see, oh, they have very nice picture on the right, but this is a human brain. Because on the left, you only have dots, and you have to interpret this. So again, technology can help to understand, to visualize, to map things, but without the human brain at the end to interpret this and to know what's going on, it's absolutely useless. The next thing, data. So, where is technology really helping today? We are, and I think there were a few panels about this before today, we are living in a world where there is a large amount of data that are available or not available. And this data can be used for micro-targeting or targeting advertisement, or they can be used for understanding what kind of people we have online. The thing is, if you look at disinformation campaigns, the very sophisticated ones, we're looking at people who are using different kind of tools at the same time in coordination. Right now, a disinformation campaign can start on Google, then use a Facebook page, and go back on Twitter, then use Instagram advertisement, etc., etc., etc. The problem right now is, as researchers, you have only access to some of the data which are made available by some of the platforms. And right now, we have a huge discussion in Brussels about the Facebook ad libraries that are being rolled out in Brussels. The thing is, to understand this and to be able to use machine learning, for instance, to understand what kind of ads are being published, what kind of tactics, what kind of strategy are behind, you need to crunch data from different sources. And right now, this is not possible. So there is a need for having data sets that could be available for researchers so they can research campaign cross platforms. Because if we don't have this, we can, let's say, track one bad campaign on Facebook, but not knowing what's behind every platform and what every actor does on other platforms. So I think there is a need also, in terms of machine learning and data available, to have data sets that are available for researchers and for journalists, which are cross-platforms, because if not, we're just going to play with some partial data that can help to win a battle, but not to win on the long term on this information. And then we need to understand that technology is, you can hijack technology and technology can hijack you. So technology that can be used for sometimes for mapping things from different point of views, and I think Bellingcat, Nick, showed it in the last panel. Technology used in the left side to reconstruct a car from different pictures that have been taken can also be used to reconstruct a place, to understand where a photo was taken. In the right case, you see it's from a Bellingcat case. It's when they tracked down a fugitive that killed one person in the Netherlands and flew to Iran. They found his Instagram back, and by being able to see the kind of Instagram pictures and video he was posting, they were able to reconstruct the place where the fugitive was hiding to rightly inform the police of what's going on and where you could catch the guy, or at least to get contact with him. So technology can be developed for something which was not meant at the beginning, and that can be very useful at the end, because sometimes we don't think about everything that we do in terms of technology. And I think that's very important when we build technology right now, to think about how it can be useful for the case you want to solve, or the investigation that you want to run on disinformation, and how it can be hijacked for wrong purposes. So we need to be sure that when we whack-a-mole, we don't not whack things that could be useful for investigation, and we need to understand what kind of things are useful for us. Briefly about the STOA study, briefly because it's a 100-page study, and I don't encourage you to print it for saving the environment, but you can read it online. We've been looking at technology impact on disinformation, both from creation of disinformation. So creation means how can you use and how you can generate very easily fake profile pictures to create fake persona online, and that's super easy to do. How you can very easily do amplification through advertisement that costs you a little bit of money, or through astroturfing that costs you a little time, or through automation where you need a little bit of scripting capacities. And we also look at automation and technology regarding verification and detection. I think verification, detection, and fact-checking are going to be addressed by the other speakers. And from them, we have a few recommendations. The one is to be sure that we have access to data set that could be useful for journalists and researchers and civil society, and cross-expertise project like the We Verify project we are working on with Joren, which assembles academics, researchers, journalists, NGOs, and I think that's very crucial in the next steps. Last thing, for me technology is like a hammer, so a hammer can help you to build a house, a hammer can break a skull, and when you have a hammer you tend to see nails everywhere. So technology is very useful, but it's not only the thing. If you look at what very good journalism do right now, it uses technology, but only technology, and I think that's the lesson of all these information campaigns that we are seeing right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's your applause, Alexandre. Come on, wake up. So while I just change slides, I take a bit of time. Just one quick question for Alexandre before we move on, and please give us a 15-second answer. If you had a wish, I mean, I know you're dealing a lot with analysis, and you give a recommendation in the STOA report, but if you had a wish now, what would it be?
To be able to
working and dealing with all this information and analysis that you're doing. If you had one wish.
If I had one wish, is to be able to do cross-research in platforms, not only in semantics, so not only in text, but also in image and videos, because that's the key thing to understand how content is replicated from platforms to platforms automatically or with timestamps that are very close. Someone publishing a tweet and a video published at the same time 1 minute later on Facebook can be pure coincidence or can be something else.
Okay, thank you very much. Next in line is Hazel Baker. Hazel is working for Reuters, and she is the head of UGC, user-generated content news gathering at Reuters. Previously, she worked for Sky News, where she was digital editor and home news editor, if I remember correctly. And she is dealing with user-generated content and its verification on a day-to-day basis. And she's doing that in order to use it for the news agency's reporting. And we're very curious to find out about how she and how her team approaches it. And I found also very interesting the research I did in preparation for this. There was a piece that was very recently written by her in Press Gazette, and one of their approaches was at Reuters that they created fake videos themselves in order to train their journalists and watch out for the specific issues and things. And one of the learnings, and I wrote it down, was, and I have to get my glasses on, was, and I quote, "Pre-exposure to a problem allows us to critically assess problems more effectively." So how they address problems and how they deal with verification, we're very curious to find out now from Hazel, and please also give her a warm round of applause. This is her first time here at the Journalism Festival in Perugia.
Well, thanks for that introduction, Jochen. I'm afraid you'll have to come to my session on Saturday to learn about the deepfakes.
So that's a cliffhanger now.
It is a cliffhanger, but you're right. That's exactly the approach that we've tried to take, is learning from real-life examples. And to that end, I've actually brought some examples to show you today. So the reason that Reuters invests so much time in trying to authenticate material is because whenever we get a breaking spot news event now, with the saturation of smartphones as it is, it's very likely that the first cameras on the scene aren't going to be professional ones. And we know that the many thousands of publications and of channels that Reuters supplies need these images fast, but they need them to be correct. So we know that everything we put out on the Reuters wire has got to be what it says it is. So I'm actually going to start with a quote from Alex's report. Now, he jokes about it being 100 pages long, but it is really worth reading. I have read it, 100 pages. And I think it's a really good overview of this area. And actually, I learned a lot about the way you categorize misinformation, disinformation too. And therefore, I think it's well worth the read. The area that I'm interested in is content verification. So I've borrowed this quote. Content verification is complementary to fact-checking, and it's concerned with verifying whether an image, video, or a meme has been tampered with or promotes false information. So that's the area that we're specifically interested in. I'm going to draw out 3 areas in which technology is helping with this process, but I'm also going to talk about the limitations that these technologies offer. So the first one will be tools for collaborative verification. Anyone who's worked in verification knows it's not usually just one person with one kind of way of doing it. It usually has to involve a range of different techniques, tools, and actually expertise from different people. Metadata I'll come on to, and then reverse image search. So let's start with the tools for collaborative verifications. Gonna work? Yeah, okay, so whenever we get a story, a news story happening, and we get some video or imagery into our newsroom, we start to think about how we're going to verify this. And we've got a dedicated team at Reuters. We've got 12 social media producers who work only on verifying social media material, eyewitness media, and getting the rights to use it on our wires. For us in that team, which I lead, we use something called SamDesk. But there's lots of other options out there. And you basically need a system to record the assets as they come in, keep a track of them, annotate them, and tag them. So when we know content's been verified, we can tag it, and then we get a record of it. If we know that it's a false piece of video, we can tag it as false, but also annotate it. So that's a really important way of just having a workflow, using a piece of technology that's really helped this process. In the field, it's a bit different. So Reuters has thousands of journalists worldwide, and many of them are actually deployed on the front line of breaking news events. Networks can be strained, they're under a lot of pressure, and so actually opening up a desktop application is not going to work. We found that the simple way of just using WhatsApp has really enabled us to reach those people very quickly if we need them to help verify video. I'll come on to an example in the next slide, but it can be a fantastic way of sharing imagery very quickly and getting an immediate on the spot, yes or no, does this match what I can see? And then finally with sources, so when we find a piece of social media, or find a piece of media on social media, we are looking to speak to the person, the original copyright holder of that material. And when we do get in touch with them, we try to get their full files. And that's harder than you might think. I think the growth in cloud-based software like Google Drive, like WeTransfer, Dropbox has certainly helped that, but it's still surprisingly difficult to get full files from people. Onto an example. So this was a really deadly fire that happened at a Cairo railway station in February. We saw lots of media, people posting on Twitter, on Facebook, videos of the scene, both from outside the railway station and from inside. The first screenshot on the left there is of our SamDesk platform. So that's a video that we've seen on Twitter, imported into Sam, and tagged, and we've got two producers working on this. So the person in the news desk in London is speaking to the people who are in touch with the guys on the ground in Cairo, and then we've got an Arabic speaker in Amman who was there giving translations immediately, looking through it and looking for any clues as well. So are there any audio clues, any visual clues in Arabic that are going to help tell us this is exactly Cairo, this is where it says it is. And on the right there is a screenshot of a piece of CCTV that later emerged that we tried to verify. Now, we had a photographer who'd been at the scene just a few minutes after the incident happened, and what he needed to do was see this. So it was a simple case of sending it over via WhatsApp and saying, does this match where you were? Yes, he said, it does. So sometimes verification is that simple. We've got someone in the right place. Often it's not that simple, and it takes a lot more steps. The limitation I've put at the bottom here is it's still a challenge to get uncompressed original files from sources, and even when people understand why we need the original files, sometimes the networks aren't strong enough to support sending a huge video file. It can be quite difficult to clip longer files into pieces to send, and also people don't understand compression, and they don't realize that when you send a video or a picture by email, it often strips all that metadata, and particularly via WhatsApp it does that. I'll come on to metadata on the next slide and why we need it. So this is a video, if I press play, there we go. This is a video that we saw in February, and is said to show the moment that a plane trying to land in Gibraltar had to do a go-around. Watch the angles of those wings.
So take the train when you go home.
Yeah. So as soon as this was published on Facebook, we had people going, it's got to be fake, it's got to be CGI, and it certainly raised a few eyebrows in our newsroom. But at the time that it was published, we also heard that a BA flight had been diverted from Gibraltar and had to land in Malaga because of strong crosswinds. And we thought, well, hold on a minute, that looks like Gibraltar. It's tagged as Gibraltar. So we set to work verifying it. And one of the key factors in the verification here was the metadata analysis. So once we got hold of the source, we asked him to send us the video file, and we said to him, what device did you take it on? An iPhone X, he said. Okay, great. Can you, don't just WhatsApp it to us, can you WeTransfer us the file? So he did. And we found the best way to examine metadata from an iPhone is simply to open the WeTransferred file onto the iPhone, and then you get all the embedded data showing up within your camera roll itself. Now, you can examine this on a desktop as well, but it's actually very simple on a phone. So you'll see the screenshot of the map there. That's what showed up on my phone when I downloaded the video as La Linea, just next to Gibraltar there. And if you zoomed in, it was actually on the very tip of the port of Gibraltar. Now, that matched exactly with where he said he was, and his offices, his place of work, because he told us where he worked for. And we could check all this, you know, it's open source information to find out the address of this company. So that was really useful to know. The limitation, of course, is that metadata can be altered, and it's actually not very difficult to do. So how much store can we put in it? Is it even worth examining? I think it is, because I think a lot of verification is building up a case. Imagining you were trying to present this in a court case, you know, you've got all of these factors which show it's authentic. And if you can start to have really build up a body of evidence, then it becomes much more likely and reaches the point where we're confident to say this is authentic. It's also interesting to note that we were sent this video maybe an hour after this happened. It had the correct timestamp on, and I thought that's some pretty good fakery if they've gone to the trouble of changing the geolocation, changing the timestamp, you know, sticking some CGI, very good CGI if it were, on that video and getting it out there in an hour. So all that kind of stuff matters. Okay, on to the next point. At this point, I'll bring in a screenshot of InVid, which Jochen knows all about. So as well as having the metadata on that video, we also had some very good geographical clues, because although most of it was focused on the plane, at the end there, the user swung down to show us the scene outside the port of Gibraltar. If you work in a broadcast environment, you probably have an editing piece of software on your computer, and you can flick through frame by frame for frame by frame analysis. And that's something we're very used to doing, because I work in a team of video producers, and we have Avid on all the machines. But if you don't, and many people are using much more lighter editing software, then I highly recommend InVid as a way of flicking through frame by frame. It is really, really good, and you can tag it as well and annotate it there. So thanks to Jochen and everyone involved in building that. I think it's a great tool. And of course, in this case, the location metadata was an exact match for some of the landmarks that we could see in that frame. That wasn't the only thing we used to verify this video. We had to be absolutely sure, and actually the thing that really swung it for me was speaking to 2 independent witnesses, showing them the video and saying, does that look does that match what you saw when you looked out the window that day? Yes, they said. In fact, one said, I think it was worse than that. It really looked like it was going to do a roll. So once I'd heard that and established that they seemed to be authentic witnesses, I was confident we had a piece of authentic video. Okay, on to the last point, which was reverse image search. This is a real pillar of verification. And I've really tried to drum it into everybody who works in video verification. Make it your first port of call, because you can save yourself hours just by doing some really good reverse image search. Going back to InVid as well, the tool has made this much quicker because it generates keyframes from your video. So if you haven't downloaded InVid, do it. Otherwise, you will have to go through your video and extract the keyframes yourself, which you can do if you've got a spare hour. Or you can do it in 30 seconds by uploading this. So you take your file, which is either sitting on your desktop or online, put the URL in or upload the file, and it generates a series of keyframes for you. Now, this is the example that I was going to show you. I'm sorry, it's a really graphic video, so I'm not going to show you the video. This was a keyframe from a piece of video, and sadly those are bodies on the beach at an unknown location at this point. This was shared with us by a colleague one of my Reuters colleagues in South Africa, following Cyclone Idai, and he sent it to me and he said, Hazel, I've just been sent this terribly distressing video. It's said to be Mozambique, bodies washing up after the cyclone there. I took one look and thought, that's not Mozambique. That doesn't match with any of the reports that I've been hearing. I knew there were bodies washing up around areas of the estuary that had flooded, but not on the beach like that. So I was skeptical to begin with. So I ran this straight through InVid. But I didn't get any matches to start with at all. However, if you keep generating new keyframes, which you can, and you should do, I started to get a match. So at this point, so that the 2 keyframes you see at the top, they didn't yield any results, but later keyframes did. And what they showed is actually this video had circulated before. One of the times it circulated had involved the 2018 tsunami in Indonesia. But at that point, it had also been debunked, and an official had come out and said, this is not the tsunami. And a second tweet suggested that it could be Libya, and all of a sudden I thought, yes, I think that is Libya. I think I might have seen this scene before. So I started to search both the Reuters archive, which unfortunately had a lot of results for shipwrecks in Libya, and I also searched YouTube, and one thing I've found is if video tends to be recycled and relabeled, it's often quite high up the YouTube rankings because people don't spend hours looking back for video. And yeah, immediately typing in Libya, migrants, bodies and beach, I brought up the 2014 report, which seemed to show the same scenes. And then I went back to the Reuters archive and checked that exact date. Turns out this was actually a piece of Reuters footage. So it had done full circle and started as a piece of Reuters footage. 5 years later nearly, it turns up back on my colleague's desk, said to show an entirely different story. And if you think that's a one-off case, it's really not, because another contact I had from Mozambique just yesterday messaged me the exact same video and said, this is Boozy. Now, he lives 10 kilometers from Boozy, and yet he thought that was his local area. So, you know, it just goes to show how permanent some of these videos can be. And that sort of concludes the points I was going to talk about.
Great. Thank you very much, Hazel. Also, a very quick question from my side. I mean, you've pointed out numerous areas where technology supports your work, but it's still very time-consuming and laborious.
Yep.
I know it's not Christmas yet, but it's Easter coming up. So if you want to make your wish list for Christmas or Easter, what would it be? Where do you think, if you would be helped or supported here, what would that be on your wish list? Where do you think, or where would you like to have support from technology?
Support? Well, I would really like to see the social networks help us more with this challenge. And one simple thing I'd really like to see is, I wonder if they could help us help users send us original files. I hope I've shown how important metadata is, getting bigger files. When you send a video through Facebook Messenger, through Twitter DMs, through Instagram DMs, all the metadata is stripped, and in WhatsApp. I'd really like an option for the user to be able to send it in a full format. I think that would be really useful, and I think as long as it was well explained that this will send it in its original format, I think that would be a good addition.
Okay. Thanks very much. Right, so we've got the third one in line here, and that's Guido Bülow. Guido is working for Facebook, and he used to be the head of news partnerships before, and he just changed jobs very recently in March, if I'm correct. And since March, he's also, among many other things, head of the head of the fact-checking partnerships. And that's something he's going to be talking about. I mean, you have probably heard a lot of the partnership that Facebook has started, and Guido is going to talk about that, but also what Facebook is doing in that domain and how it's supporting it, and how also technology can aid in the process. Over to you, Guido. And you can also welcome him with a warm round of applause.
Thank you, Johan. So when we're talking about fighting misinformation, we are actually having three buckets that we're working on. First of all, we remove content from our platform. Second, we're reducing distribution, and we want to inform people. So, and I want to touch base on all of these three buckets and where we facilitate technology to leverage like the work that we're doing with third-party fact checkers all around the world. So, first of all, we remove any sort of content that is violating our community standards. So, as you might know, we want to keep people safe on our platform. And as soon as something is violating our community standards, 30,000 people nowadays are working on user reports and helping to remove content that violates any of our community standards. And other than that, I mean, we're removing fake accounts. Right now, it's 1 million fake accounts a day that will be removed. We're also, like I said, removing anything that it violates our community standards. Plus, I mean, if we see there are bad actors out there, we're also removing the right to monetize content on our platform and also to advertise on our platform. So we know a lot of bad actors out there that have like we want to disrupt the financial incentives for people that are actually trying to earn money with the use of our platform. When we're looking at the reduced distribution bucket, we're reducing distribution of that content that is not violating our community standards, but where we see that is inauthentic. So what is inauthentic content? Inauthentic content could be anything like clickbaiting, engagement baiting, spam. It could be something like ad fraud. So you probably have visited a website in the past where you entered a website, single piece, a small piece of content, and lots of advertising or malicious software behind that, and this is something that we demote in newsfeed. Other than that, obviously, and I'm talking on that in a little bit, is our fact-checking effort. Just so that you understand, also like 3 steps: we're identifying, partners are rating content, and we actually take action. How that actually works, I will come back to in a minute. And last but not least, because it's very important that we're not just taking action against certain kind of content, but we also want to empower people to better understand what kind of content they're actually consuming on Facebook. So we launched article context some time ago, that people actually get a better understanding of the content that they're reading on Facebook, that they're consuming on Facebook. So who is actually the publisher? What other articles are being published by this publisher? In what kind of area are these articles distributed? So just to get a better understanding and empower people to take an informed decision. Other than that, we're having news literacy campaigns on our platform that we worked on together with third parties, for example, like Full Fact in UK. And just to give people, to help people to understand what misinformation could look like. It could be like a headline, a suspicious headline. It could be a suspicious URL and plenty of other things. It's 10 tips. It's very easy to consume for people. And this is something that we're doing constantly on our platform. But looking at third-party fact-checking, so we launched a third-party fact-checking in 2017, and this was fact-checking in 4 countries: US, in the Netherlands, in Germany, and France. And as of last week, actually this week, as of Monday, we are now active in 47 countries, 43 partners, 24 languages. So we're covering a lot of countries. Obviously, we're still trying to expand fact-checking efforts globally. We're partnering together with the International Fact-Checking Network, so the signatories of the International Fact-Checking Network, they're eligible to be our partners, so that there is some independent third party in between to protect, obviously, the third parties for, I don't know, whenever someone that is being fact-checked, that an independent organization has actually vetted these organizations that we're working together with. So what do the fact-checkers actually do, and where do we facilitate technology? As I said, we identify, based on certain signals, potential hoaxes on and misinformation on our platform. So what could that be? First of all, user reports. Quite simple. Whenever someone is seeing something in newsfeed, you can click on the 3 little dots next to an article or a video or an image or a status update, and they can report that for misinformation. Other than that, we're picking up different other signals. For example, whenever someone is writing disbelief comments, so something like, oh, this seems to be a hoax, or I don't believe that, something like that. Other signal could be, for example, Jochen might have shared an article in the past. It has been fact-checked. Now he's sharing another article that might be suspicious because he already shared an article that has been fact-checked. It's just another signal where we train our machines to identify hoaxes on our platform that we then send to our fact-checkers, and they have the possibility that they don't have to because they have an amount of articles and pieces of content that we provide where they can choose from and fact-check these articles. So that brings me to the next topic. They actually review the pieces of content that we will provide them. They don't have to choose anything of that list at all. They can also bring in like their own content. And whenever they decide something is misinformation, whether this is false, whether this is a false headline or anything like that, they provide a rating, and we actually demote this piece of content then in newsfeed. So, and I come to this in a second, what this actually means and entails. Just to give you a little bit more details about, for example, when someone is fact-checking whether this is an article, video, or an image. If someone is, for example, fact-checking an image and debunking an image, obviously we have the ability with technology to identify duplicates on our platform. So even if a fact checker is just providing one single rating on a picture, we could identify like all other pictures on our platform that actually is like a duplicate and act on these pictures as well. So with one single rating, we could potentially demote thousands of pieces of content. And same for articles. So we just recently launched a new tool where someone is, for example, and we discussed that up front, in Asia, plastic rice, fake plastic rice is a piece of misinformation that is around for 10 years. So you could debunk like every single piece of that misinformation. But what we are now working on or have launched yet now is our fact checkers just debunk it once, and we are searching for sort of duplicates, provide that to our fact checkers, and they can apply these ratings to all of these contents, so that, again, with one single rating, they could actually help us much better with the facilitation of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So just a couple of things, impact on a story. Obviously, we're demoting distribution. We're helping people, we're informing people as soon as they want to share a piece of misinformation on our platform. We notify people when they have shared something and it has been fact-checked, I don't know, a day later. And obviously, last but not least, we're providing related pieces of content, related articles, related images, related videos. And this is actually the effect that we have seen on our platform. As soon as something has been fact-checked, we're able to reduce distribution by 80%. And what do we do with those that are actually are repeated offenders, so actually sharing misinformation again and again? So what we do is actually we're reducing distribution of the domain and the page. So technically it doesn't get any distribution anymore. I mean, if someone is interested to see that content, they still can go to that page, which, to be honest, and I think that's a user behavior we all actually show every day. We don't go to a page, we just consume content in newsfeed. But it's technically still on our platform, but we're not. We're reducing like distribution almost completely. Plus, like I said in the beginning, they don't have the opportunity to earn money with their content on our platform anymore, and we don't allow them to advertise on our platform. And this is in a nutshell what we're doing with third-party fact-checking, with the International Fact-Checking Network and technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guido. So since I've now unpacked the wish list, I'd also like to give Guido the opportunity. I mean, Facebook has had a bit of a rough ride in recent months or years. So if you had a wish, and when it comes to this misinformation ecosystem, for example, you countering with the third-party fact-checkers, what would your wish be for the future?
I expected that question.
I didn't tell you that.
No, you didn't tell me that. That's true. No, for now, I would say, I don't know. I would love to see the fact-checking community grow globally. We still see there are plenty of countries where there aren't any fact-checkers, where we love to partner with fact-checkers. I don't know, especially when we're looking into Eastern Europe. There are certain countries where we would love to partner with someone, but there is no one, and we're trying to help and build and grow that fact-checking community by doing collaborating with the International Fact-Checking Network. But that would be my wish, that we see more organizations that we could partner with. And yeah, that's my wish for Easter.
Right, and now it's all about you, because as I said, we want to involve you in the discussion. So if there are any questions now, feel free to ask them, but the focus is on questions, please. No statements, no long statements, but come to the point. And if you want to address your questions to somebody in particular, then please do. And Alex, you have the first question? So that's how it goes. The panelists can
don't deserve the first question.
You have a microphone, okay.
Now, I have a question for Guido, in fact. You're showing in the last thing that the 80% so reduction before, after fact-checking. How do you explain the raise into arriving to something which is very well distributed on the platform? So how do you have any way to explain why some fake content is spreading on the platform, and what are the incentive or the tools that are helping fake content to spread?
I mean, to some extent, fake content is facilitating techniques that we're seeing with engagement baiting, clickbaiting. So, so most of the bad actors that we see out there, they have financial incentives to earn as much money as possible by bringing people onto their platform. So how do they do that? They're exaggerating, they're withholding information. And I mean, it seems like that people obviously, I don't know, they tend to somewhat, how do I phrase that? It seems, and I wouldn't say enjoy, but somehow pick up on that. I mean, we see that with letters media as well. So when you look at the distribution of tabloid newspapers, opposed to, like, let's say, those newspapers that tend to have like longer articles, long reads, and less pictures in their newspaper, I mean, they're much more widely sold and read than like these other newspapers. So I think that's comparable, and this might lead to the uptake in the beginning of the distribution. Like I said, I mean, we have plenty of techniques in place to address this issue. One of the techniques is to work together with fact checkers. The other is to pick up on certain signals like engagement baiting, clickbaiting, and all of, and even certain other signals, like especially when it comes to click and engagement baiting, that we pick up certain signals, how people react to a certain posting. So for example, for engagement baiting, people are always asked for to reply in a certain way. So if we see, I don't know, they have to vote on, let's say, 4 pictures with just 4 reactions, and we're seeing just these 4 reactions, that is very suspicious. So that could lead to a demotion, for example, of that content. So it's a couple of things that lead to these phenomena, and we're trying to address this with a couple of techniques.
Okay. Any questions from your side? Because I have got loads, otherwise.
This is a question for Guido. Sorry, it's not designed to be as confrontational as it might sound.
Ask the camera. Go ahead.
There's quite a famous documentary called The Cleaners on content moderation within Facebook and the outsourcing of content moderation. And it depicts some fairly brutal standards for the workers performing this public service. Has this changed, and could you explain how it's changed?
Honestly, I'm not working on community operations, so I know Alessio is here. Maybe he has some more information and can answer that question thereafter. I would have to make something up. I'm really not working in that area. I'm just working on the integrity partnerships, so when it comes to, I'll work with third-party fact checkers, but not with community operations, I'm sorry.
This one. We are just when we were warming up outside, I was also talking to Hazel about this, and this is something very important to take also into consideration to protect journalists from exposure, or people dealing with UGC from exposure, and also giving them tools and methods how to deal with it. It's very important, and Reuters is doing that. So if you are interested, I'm sure Rachel will also be available afterwards to talk to you about that. But since the topic is sort of more on the technical side now, I'd like to ask Rachel something related. And that, Rachel, I'm saying Rachel, Hazel, sorry about that. Sorry about that. I'd like to ask Hazel, you said earlier that you've got 12 people working in sort of dedicated social editors. What would you say are the prime requirements? What do they need to know? And also to those of you in the room or so, if you want to get deeper into that, what would your advice be to people out here? What is essential knowledge? What to know, what technologies to use, and how to get into that sphere? Because I would expect it's a growing field where there's more expertise required.
I think that's absolutely right. I think it's a really good area to work in. It's really fascinating. I think it's more about what you don't know. We want people with curiosity who need to find out the answers, who know where the gaps are and can think about who might be able to fill those gaps. Who would know what model plane that was in that video clip I just showed you? Who would know where that location was? Who could I ask? And having the confidence to ask those questions and to not give up and to be very persistent as well. I also really like people who are kind of assessing stuff with a critical eye always. I think that's a very useful skill to have. And then apart from that, being able to deal with a lot of data and being able to sift through stuff quickly and being able to not be totally overwhelmed by stuff. You've got to be able to categorize. Is that important? If it's not, get it out of the way. What do I want to focus on? What's the most important news story today as well? So an editorial eye is also hugely important because, well, we've talked about the range of material out there, which is inauthentic. We can't spend all day doing everything. We've got to decide which are the stories that matter to Reuters clients today, which are the pieces of content we've really got to verify and make sure we get out. So yeah, focus and an ability to deal with a lot of data, and then a real curiosity are the main things for me.
And what's your prediction for the What's your prediction for the future? Is this going to be even bigger for news agency like Reuters, or what do you see there?
It's absolutely not going anywhere at all. It's only going to get bigger because the smartphone proliferation is increasing all the time, and areas that before we might have expected to see no UGC from, now we are definitely seeing UGC from. So as the rates of people with access to smartphones and stable networks increases, so does our challenge in terms of the range of stories that we cover. So definitely a growing area.
Okay, that's 1, 2, 3 questions. No? No?
Quick one? Yeah.
Well, you said 5 past. We have
5 minutes.
5 minutes, yeah. Okay, 5 minutes, yeah. So quick one, please. 3 quick ones.
Okay, so this is one for Guido again. This is about the integration of WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook all together in the back end. Will the methods that you've described be able to translate to WhatsApp and Instagram? Because on WhatsApp you get so many viral stories that are completely fake, and then also with Instagram lots of fake videos. Could that translate?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. So I think, so first of all, WhatsApp is encrypted. So that's definitely a tougher, that's a tougher issue because we cannot look at the content. It's simply encrypted. For Instagram, I think that is a little bit easier, and it's something that we're looking into, to be honest. So I mean, we're having regular conversations, to be honest, with our third-party fact-checkers on a monthly basis, on a bi-weekly basis, just to gather feedback. What should we work on next? And I mean, obviously, we see that it's not just happening on Facebook, but also on other platforms. So that might be something where we're looking into the future. When it comes to WhatsApp, I mean, my colleague Carl was on a panel today and was talking a little bit about WhatsApp and what we're doing over there. We just started a research project in India with the WhatsApp Business API and a consortium that is looking at misinformation on WhatsApp to get a better understanding of the scale of the issue. Other than that, we addressed a couple of things like making tweaks to the product so that, first of all, you cannot forward a message to more than 5 people. We identify people that are like have a very suspicious user behavior and just forwarding messages to people. We're having news literacy campaigns, for example, in India, which are on TV, on radio, and in print, and a couple of other things to address that issue. Like I said, it's a little bit harder because it's encrypted, so it's not an easy solution as with Facebook, for example, but it's something we're constantly working on, yeah.
Another quick one.
Question for Hazel. You mentioned the SAM platform which you're using. Did you build that yourself, and what kind of functionality is built in there?
No, we didn't build it ourselves. It's a third party, it's a company, and they're available to everyone. Obviously, it's a paid for piece of software. The functionality that I particularly like is the user interface is very simple. and the tag system works really well, so you can quickly identify even just by glancing down. If it's red, don't go near that. We can also warn each other when stuff is graphic, because I think, going back to Jochen's point about dealing with this material, a lot of it's very hard to work with, and being able to flag up that immediately is really useful. And just for record keeping, because we've seen the same videos, they come back all the time, being able to go back and check, we looked into this already. And also for verification, because if we think the incident's happened somewhere we've covered before, we can look back at our, not only the Reuters archive, which is huge, but also this archive of third-party material, which we've already done the work on. So all that's really useful, and it allows search by location and a few other features as well. But actually, for us, it's a curation of the content and being organised, because you do have to show your workings when it comes to verifying material. I mean, you have to be able to explain. I always have to be able to explain. If someone comes back to me and says, how does Reuters know that's what it says it is? Need to be able to give a good answer. And some of that is keeping track of how we got to the answer that we did.
I'm afraid we have to come. Can we have one more? Yeah. And then quick roundup, so one more.
Okay, I'll keep it quick. I also have a question for Hazel. Let's take the Gibraltar plane as an example. How long did it take from the point where you were sent the video to the point where you felt comfortable publishing it? And how many people are involved in the fact-checking process?
In that process, I can tell you exactly. We got that an hour after it happened, which was 11:30 local time. We published it. It's tea time. It's about 5.5 hours later. So that's pretty slow, really. But the reason it was pretty slow is we wanted to be absolutely sure that this was legit. And there were lots of, it was, again, building up that evidence. So we've spoken to the witnesses, and tracking down those witnesses took a while. We got the original file in, that took a while. We spoke to BA and got a statement. And we looked for any other corroborating material. So all that built up this basis for believing that this is an authentic piece of material. How many people were involved? Three of us were kind of the core participants in that. But that's not counting the witnesses that we spoke to, or the guy at BA. So maybe 6.
Right, looking at the time, I'd like to do a very, very quick round, a finishing round, but it's only asking every one of the panelists to complete a sentence, and they're all going to get the same sentence. And the question is, or the sentence is, with regards to the misinformation ecosystem, I think in the next 12 months, ... So I would start with Alexander, just give you a little bit of time to think about it. So what do you think will happen in the next 12 months with regards to the misinformation ecosystem?
I think we have absolutely no clue, and that's what's most frightening.
That's almost like a closing word. Hazel, what is your thought, or what's your prediction?
Okay, I think the technology allowing us to debunk stuff quickly will improve, but the actual process of positive authentication is still going to require some serious human brain power.
And Guido, the next 12 months, what has it got in store?
We will definitely expand our efforts to fight misinformation, not just with the techniques we have shown here, but like expanding our techniques and potentially also ideas how to fight misinformation.
Right, I'm afraid this is all we've got time for. I think what we've learned is that technology can help a lot, but in the foreseeable future, there's still going to be the human in the loop. So if you're interested in that job, there's certainly lots of opportunities out there, and you can talk to anybody afterwards. I'm sure they will be available. Thank you very much for your time, and I don't know. And I'd also like to thank the panel very much. I mean, it was always too little time and too many things to discuss, but I hope you've had some illuminating insights. Thanks, and enjoy the Journalism Festival.
Thanks, Jochen.
Thank you. Thank you.
The territory of
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry about that, Rachel.
Do you know what?